The stage-coach door swung open with a weary creak, and Willa Jensen stepped into the harsh afternoon sun of Sioux Falls, Dakota Territory, clutching nothing but a worn leather bag and a belly that made her shame visible to every eye on the dusty street. It was May of 1878, and she had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to, and every judgmental stare from the townspeople felt like a brand upon her skin. She had left Kansas City 3 weeks ago, running from a man who had promised her the world and given her nothing but a child growing inside her and bruises that had finally faded to yellow shadows on her ribs. The journey had been brutal, each jolt of the stage making her stomach turn, each stop reminding her that she was utterly alone in this world. Her mother had died 2 years back, her father before that, and the sister she had hoped might take her in had written back a single line that still burned in Willa's memory. "I cannot have scandal under my roof." So Sioux Falls it was, a town she had chosen by closing her eyes and pointing at a map, hoping that distance and anonymity might grant her some measure of peace. She was 21 years old, brown-haired and green-eyed, with a face that had once been called pretty but now wore the exhaustion of fear and uncertainty. Her dress was simple calico, let out at the seams as much as possible, and her bonnet shadowed features that she hoped would go unnoticed. The main street stretched before her, lined with wooden buildings that seemed to lean into each other like tired old men. A general store stood across the way, its painted sign faded by sun and weather. A saloon called the Lucky Dollar occupied the corner, piano music tinkling through its swinging doors even at this early hour. There was a church with a white steeple, a bank that looked more prosperous than the rest, and various other establishments that spoke of a town trying to civilize itself against the wild backdrop of the frontier. Willa took a breath and started walking, feeling the weight of her condition with every step. She needed work, and she needed it quickly. The few dollars she had left would not last more than a week, maybe 2 if she was careful. She had been a seamstress back in Kansas City, had good hands and a steady eye, but she wondered who would hire a woman in her state, unmarried and obviously so. She tried the general store first, pushing through the door to the smell of coffee beans and leather. The proprietor, a thin man with spectacles that sat crooked on his nose, took one look at her and shook his head before she could even speak. "Not hiring," he said flatly, his eyes dropping to her middle and then away as if the sight offended him. The milliner's shop was the same, though the woman there at least had the grace to look apologetic. "I am sorry, dear, but it would not do for my customers. You understand." Willa understood all too well. She had tried 4 more establishments by the time the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that would have been beautiful if she had the heart to notice. Her feet ached, her back ached worse, and the baby chose that moment to flutter inside her like a trapped bird, reminding her that time was not on her side. She found herself standing outside the church as the light began to fade, wondering if she should appeal to the minister for charity. Pride warred with desperation, and desperation was winning when she heard a voice behind her. "You look lost." Willa turned to find a man watching her from beside a hitching post where a paint horse stood with the patience of long habit. He was tall, built like someone who worked hard for his living, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that was weathered but not unkind. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-blue, and they studied her with an expression she could not quite read. He wore the clothes of a working ranch hand, denim and leather worn soft with use, and there was dust on his boots that spoke of long miles ridden. "I suppose I am," Willa said, too tired to dissemble. "I just arrived today and I am looking for work." His eyes did drop to her belly then, but there was no judgment in his gaze, only something that might have been sadness. "That is going to be difficult," he said quietly. "People in towns like this, they are quick to judge and slow to forgive." "I have noticed," Willa said, hearing the bitterness in her own voice and not caring. The man was quiet for a moment, one hand resting on his horse's neck in an absent gesture that suggested long affection. "My name is Zachary Lawson," he said finally. "I have a ranch about 5 miles north of town. It is not much, just me and too much land for one person to manage properly. I could use help with cooking, mending, general keeping of the house. It is hard work, and the place is isolated, but it comes with room and board and wages enough to get by on." Willa stared at him, trying to understand what she was hearing. "You would hire me, looking like this? I figure you need work and I need help. Seems straightforward enough." Zachary's voice was measured, almost careful, as if he was working through his own thoughts as he spoke them. "I have been alone out there for 3 years now, since my wife passed. The house has gotten away from me, I will admit that freely, and I am tired of my own cooking. Your wife died." The words came out before Willa could stop them, and she immediately regretted the intrusion, but Zachary only nodded. "Fever took her. We had only been married a year." He said it simply, without dramatics, but Willa heard the weight of grief that still lingered in those words. "Anyway, the offer stands if you want it. I know you do not know me from Adam, and you would be right to be cautious. But I give you my word that you would be safe there, and that I am offering honest work for honest pay." Willa's mind raced. Every instinct told her to be wary of strange men making offers that seemed too good to be true. But every other door had been closed to her, and she could see in this man's eyes something that looked like sincerity. More than that, she saw loneliness, a kind that matched her own. "Why would you help me?" she asked, needing to understand. Zachary looked up at the darkening sky for a moment before answering. "My wife was with child when she died. We had been so happy about it, planning and dreaming, and then they were both gone just like that." He brought his eyes back to hers. "I suppose I figure that baby you are carrying deserves a chance, whatever the circumstances that brought it into being. And you deserve a chance too." Something in Willa's chest loosened at those words, some tight knot of fear and shame that she had been carrying for so long. She felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. "I will work hard," she said. "I promise you that. I will earn my keep." "I do not doubt it," Zachary said. "Can you ride? Or would you prefer to wait while I fetch the wagon? It would take a couple of hours there and back, but I do not mind." "I can ride," Willa said, though in truth she had not been on a horse in years and had never ridden in her current condition. But the thought of waiting alone in this town for 2 more hours, enduring more stares and whispers, was unbearable. Zachary studied her for a moment as if measuring the truth of her words, then nodded. "Wait here. I will get you a mount from the livery, one with a gentle disposition." He was back in 15 minutes with a bay mare that had kind eyes and a calm demeanor. Zachary helped Willa into the saddle with a steady hand and a careful respect for her dignity that she appreciated more than she could say. The ride north was taken at an easy pace, Zachary leading the way and checking back frequently to make sure she was managing. The land around Sioux Falls was beautiful in its stark way, rolling prairie that stretched to distant horizons, painted now in the purples and deep blues of twilight. The Big Sioux River wound through the landscape like a silver ribbon, and Willa could hear the rush of the falls in the distance that gave the town its name. Wildflowers dotted the grasslands, and once they startled a deer that bounded away in graceful leaps. Zachary's ranch appeared as full darkness settled over the land, announced first by the glow of a lamp he had left burning in a window. The house was small but solidly built, with a wide porch and a chimney that spoke of a good hearth within. There was a barn that looked well-maintained, a chicken coop, and several other outbuildings that Willa could not make out in the darkness. She could see the shapes of cattle in a distant pasture, dark shadows against the starlit grass. "Welcome to Lawson Ranch," Zachary said as he dismounted. "It is not much, but it is home." He helped Willa down with the same careful courtesy, and she was grateful because her legs felt shaky after the ride and her back was protesting vigorously. Zachary seemed to notice her discomfort because he said, "You go on inside and sit down. I will see to the horses and then get you something to eat." The interior of the house was indeed in need of a woman's touch, but it was clean enough in its basics, and the furniture was good, solid work. There was a main room with a fireplace, a kitchen area with a cast iron stove, and two doors that presumably led to bedrooms. Willa sank into a chair by the hearth and felt exhaustion wash over her in waves. Zachary returned within 20 minutes and set about preparing a simple meal of beans and cornbread, moving around the kitchen with the efficiency of someone long accustomed to fending for himself. "It is not fancy," he said, setting a plate before her, "but it is hot and filling." Willa ate with an appetite sharpened by the long day and the hard travel, and the food tasted better than anything she had eaten in weeks. Zachary sat across from her with his own meal, and they ate in a comfortable silence that surprised Willa. She had expected awkwardness, uncertainty, but instead there was simply the quiet companionship of two tired people sharing a table. When the meal was done, Zachary showed her to the smaller bedroom, which held a bed with a good quilt, a dresser, and a window that looked out toward the east. "This was going to be the nursery," he said quietly, "but it will serve you well enough. I put fresh linens on the bed this morning, though I will confess I am not much good at the laundering. That will be one of the things I will need your help with." "Thank you," Willa said, meaning it with her whole heart. "I cannot tell you what this means to me." Zachary nodded, his hand on the doorframe. "We will work out the details in the morning. For tonight, just rest. You look like you need it." He closed the door softly behind him, and Willa was alone in a room that smelled faintly of cedar and soap. She changed into her nightdress with fumbling fingers, too tired to be thorough, and crawled into bed. The mattress was better than the one she had endured at the stage stops, and the quilt was warm without being stifling. Through the window, she could see stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet, and she could hear the distant call of a coyote singing to the moon. For the first time in months, Willa felt something that might have been the beginning of hope. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby move slightly beneath her palm. "We are going to be all right," she whispered into the darkness. "We have found a safe place." And then sleep claimed her like a benediction. Morning came with the sound of roosters and the smell of coffee. Willa woke slowly, disoriented for a moment before memory returned. She dressed quickly in the same calico dress, making a mental note that she would need to wash her few garments soon, and made her way to the main room. Zachary was already up, dressed in work clothes and pouring coffee into 2 tin cups. "Morning," he said, glancing over at her. "There is water for washing in the pitcher on the kitchen counter. Coffee is hot, and I can fry some eggs if you are hungry." "Let me do it," Willa said, moving toward the stove. "That is what you hired me for after all." "Hired you for help, not to work yourself ragged your first day here," Zachary countered, but he stepped aside and let her take over the cooking. He watched as she cracked eggs into the skillet with practiced ease and sliced bread from a loaf that was only slightly stale. They ate together again, and over the meal, Zachary outlined what he hoped she could help with. Cooking, cleaning, mending, tending the vegetable garden that had gone mostly to weeds, caring for the chickens, and helping with the dairy cow when needed. In return, she would have her room and board, plus $10 a month in wages, which was more than generous given that she had little choice in the matter. "I will be out with the cattle most days," Zachary explained. "I run about 200 head, which is not a big operation, but it is enough to keep me busy. I have a hand who comes by a few times a week to help with the heavier work, but mostly it is just me. You will have the house mostly to yourself during the daylight hours. What about when the baby comes?" Willa asked, needing to address the elephant in the room. "I am due in September, I think, maybe early October." Zachary met her eyes steadily. "Then we will deal with it in September or October. There is a doctor in Sioux Falls, and I know a Lakota woman about 10 miles west who serves as a midwife. We will make sure you have the help you need when the time comes. And after, a newborn is going to be loud and demanding. It will disrupt your household." "This is your household too now," Zachary said. "And babies are supposed to be loud and demanding. That is how they survive." He paused, then added, "I meant what I said yesterday. That child deserves a chance, and I aim to see that it gets one. If that means some sleepless nights and a house that smells like diaper cloths, then so be it." Willa felt that loosening in her chest again, that easing of a burden she had carried alone for too long. "I do not know how to thank you." "Work hard and do not burn my coffee," Zachary said with a small smile, the first she had seen from him. It changed his face, made him look younger and less careworn. "That will be thanks enough." The days that followed fell into a rhythm that Willa found soothing in its predictability. She rose early, made breakfast for herself and Zachary, and then set about the tasks of keeping house while he rode out to check on his cattle and mend fences and do the 1,000 other things that running a ranch required. The house had indeed gotten away from him, and it took Willa the better part of 2 weeks to get it properly clean and organized, but she found satisfaction in the work. The vegetable garden responded to her attention, and soon she had lettuce and radishes coming in, with the promise of beans and squash later in the summer. The chickens rewarded her care with eggs, and she taught herself to make butter from the cow's milk, though her first attempts were more liquid than solid. Zachary ate everything she prepared without complaint, even the failed butter, and she found herself trying harder to please him, to show him that his faith in her was not misplaced. They talked in the evenings after supper was done and the dishes washed. Zachary would sit in the chair by the hearth, and Willa would take up mending or knitting, and they would share the small details of their days. She learned that he was 28, that he had come to Dakota Territory 5 years ago from Ohio, that he had built this ranch from nothing with his own 2 hands and the help of his late wife, whose name had been Margaret. She was strong, Zachary said one evening, staring into the fire. "Stronger than me in a lot of ways. She could shoot as well as any man, ride better than most, and she never complained about the hardships out here. I think she loved this land even more than I did." "You must miss her terribly," Willa said softly. "Every day," Zachary admitted. "But it has gotten easier, I suppose. The sharp pain has faded to a dull ache, and keeping busy helps." He looked over at her. "What about you? Do you want to talk about the father?" Willa's hand stilled on the shirt she was mending. They had not discussed this, had skirted around it carefully for weeks. "His name was Thomas," she said slowly. "He was a clerk at a bank in Kansas City. He said he loved me, said he wanted to marry me. I believed him." She took a breath. "When I told him about the baby, he said I was a liar and a whore, trying to trap him. He told me to get rid of it or get out of his life. When I refused, he made sure I understood that I was not welcome anymore." She did not elaborate on the bruises, the shoving, the night he had dragged her out of the boarding house by her hair while the other tenants watched from their windows and did nothing. She did not need to. Zachary's jaw tightened, and his hands clenched on the arms of his chair. "If I ever meet this Thomas, he and I will have words," Zachary said flatly. "And by words, I mean I will likely break his nose." Despite everything, Willa found herself smiling slightly. "That is a kind sentiment, but I would rather you did not end up in jail on my account." "Fair enough," Zachary said, "but know that what he said was lies. You are not any of those things he called you. You are a woman who made the mistake of trusting the wrong man, and there is no shame in that." "The world sees it differently," Willa said. "The world can go hang," Zachary replied. "What matters is how you see yourself, and how you raise that child to see the world. Everything else is just noise." As June turned to July, Willa found herself settling into life at the ranch in ways she had not anticipated. She had expected to feel like a servant, like someone tolerated out of charity, but instead she felt like a partner in the enterprise of keeping the household running. Zachary treated her with unfailing respect, never making her feel less than, never taking advantage of her vulnerable position. More than that, she found she enjoyed his company. He was a quiet man, not given to flowery speeches or unnecessary words, but when he spoke, it was with a thoughtfulness that she appreciated. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard sometimes, making her laugh when she least expected it. And he was endlessly patient with her questions about ranch life, teaching her things she had never known about cattle and horses and the rhythms of the land. One hot afternoon in mid-July, Willa was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard the sound of an approaching horse. She felt a flutter of nervousness, as she always did when strangers came to the ranch, but Zachary appeared from the barn and raised a hand in greeting, so she knew it must be someone he recognized. The rider was a young man, probably not yet 20, with sandy hair and a sunburned face. He dismounted with the easy grace of someone born to the saddle and tipped his hat to Willa with a friendly smile. "You must be Miss Jensen," he said. "I am Daniel Raid. I help Mr. Lawson out with the ranch work a few days a week." "Pleased to meet you," Willa said, liking him immediately. There was no judgment in his eyes, no sly curiosity, just an open friendliness that was refreshing. Daniel worked with Zachary that afternoon on repairing a section of the corral fence, and Willa brought them water and fresh bread with butter when they broke for a rest. The young man ate with the appetite of youth and thanked her profusely, declaring it the best bread he had eaten in months. "My ma died last year," Daniel explained, "and my pa tries, but he cannot bake worth a damn. Sorry, madam, I mean he cannot bake worth anything at all." Willa laughed. "I will send some extra home with you when you leave." After Daniel had ridden off, Zachary came into the house to wash up for supper. "Daniel is a good kid," he said. "His father has a small spread about 8 miles east. The boy is trying to save up money to buy some breeding stock of his own." "He seems nice," Willa agreed, setting bowls on the table for the stew she had made. "It is good that you help him out." "He helps me out just as much," Zachary said. "There is some work that requires 2 pairs of hands, and I cannot ask you to do it, especially not now." His eyes flicked to her belly, which had grown considerably over the past weeks and was now unmistakably prominent. Willa felt color rise in her cheeks, as it always did when attention was drawn to her condition. "I am still capable of a great deal," she said, a bit defensively. "I know you are," Zachary said gently, "but that does not mean you should push yourself beyond what is safe. You are growing a whole person in there, Willa. That is hard work all by itself." It was the first time he had used her given name instead of Miss Jensen, and somehow the intimacy of it made the color in her cheeks deepen. She busied herself with ladling stew into bowls and did not trust herself to respond. The summer heat intensified as July gave way to August, and Willa found herself moving more slowly, her body growing cumbersome as the baby grew. Zachary began insisting that she rest in the afternoons, and though she protested at first, she soon found herself grateful for the respite. She would lie on her bed with the window open, catching whatever breeze might find its way in, and listen to the sounds of the ranch around her. It was during one of these afternoon rests that she woke to find Zachary standing in the doorway of her room, his face worried. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I heard you cry out." Willa pushed herself up on her elbows, realizing she must have been dreaming. "I am sorry. I did not mean to alarm you. I was having a nightmare, I think." Zachary came a few steps into the room, then seemed to think better of it and stopped. "Do you want to talk about it?" Willa shook her head. "It was nothing, just shadows and fears given form. I am fine now." But she was not fine, not entirely, and Zachary seemed to sense it. "You are safe here," he said firmly. "I want you to know that. Whatever happens, whatever you need, you are safe here, and so is that baby." "Why?" Willa found herself asking the question that had been building in her for months. "Why are you doing this? You owe me nothing. You did not even know me before I came here, so why are you being so kind?" Zachary was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "When Margaret died, I wanted to die too. I could not see the point of going on, could not imagine a future without her. It was the darkest time of my life." He looked up, meeting Willa's eyes. "But I kept going because what else could I do? And slowly, bit by bit, it got easier. Not better, maybe, but easier. Bearable." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "When I saw you in town that day, I saw someone at their own dark moment, someone who needed help as badly as I had needed it when Margaret died. No one could bring Margaret back for me, but I could do this. I could offer you a safe place and a chance to start over. And maybe, in some small way, that helps to balance the scales, to make something good come out of all the loss." Willa felt tears slip down her cheeks, but she did not bother to wipe them away. "You are a good man, Zachary Lawson." "I am just a man trying to do right," Zachary said. "Nothing more, nothing less." He hesitated, then added, "Get some more rest. I will have supper ready when you wake up." After he left, Willa lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, her hand on her belly where the baby was kicking up a storm. She realized with a start that somewhere over the past 3 months, the fear and shame that had been her constant companions had begun to fade. In their place was something else, something warm and hopeful and terrifying in its implications. She was falling in love with Zachary Lawson. The realization should have frightened her more than it did. She had sworn after Thomas that she would never trust a man again, never let herself be vulnerable like that. But Zachary was nothing like Thomas. Where Thomas had been smooth and charming and ultimately false, Zachary was rough-edged and genuine and solid as the earth itself. Where Thomas had made grand promises he never intended to keep, Zachary simply acted, his deeds speaking louder than any words. And she thought, though she hardly dared believe it, that perhaps Zachary's feelings were changing too. She had caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she was not looking, his expression soft and unguarded. He had taken to small gestures of care, bringing her wildflowers he found on his rides, making sure she had the most comfortable chair, asking her opinion on matters of the ranch as if her thoughts truly mattered to him. But he had never said anything, never made any move that could be construed as romantic or improper. And Willa did not know if that was because he did not feel as she did, or because he was too honorable to press such attentions on a woman in her vulnerable position. August marched on, hot and dry, and the baby dropped lower in Willa's belly. making walking even more difficult but easing the pressure on her lungs. She began preparing for the birth in earnest, washing and folding the tiny garments she had sewn from fabric that Zachary had brought back from town without her asking. She had not expected him to think of such things, but when she had mentioned needing to make clothes for the baby, he had shown up the next day with muslin and flannel and even a soft woolen blanket. "The woman at the dry goods store helped me pick it out," Zachary had admitted, looking embarrassed. "I did not know what you needed." "This is perfect," Willa had said, running her hand over the fabric. "Thank you." It was a Saturday in late August when everything changed. Willa had been feeling restless all day, unable to settle to any task, pacing the house like a caged animal. Zachary had noticed and suggested they take a walk, just down to the creek and back, to ease whatever was bothering her. The evening was cooler than it had been, a hint of autumn in the air despite the calendar saying summer still had weeks to run. They walked slowly, Zachary matching his pace to hers, and Willa found herself relaxing into the rhythm of it. The prairie stretched around them in shades of gold and brown, the tall grass rippling in the breeze like waves on an ocean. "I have been thinking," Zachary said as they reached the creek bank, where cottonwood trees provided shade and the water ran clear over smooth stones, "about what happens after the baby comes." Willa felt her heart begin to beat faster. "What about it?" "You will need help in those first weeks, maybe months. I have been asking around, and there is a woman in town, Mrs. Callahan, who used to be a nurse. She has agreed to come stay here for a bit after you deliver, to help with the baby and make sure you are recovering properly." "That is very thoughtful," Willa said, meaning it but feeling a pang of something like disappointment. Was this all he wanted to discuss? Practical arrangements? Zachary nodded, his eyes on the water. "And I have been thinking about longer term, about what is best for you and the child." "Here it comes," Willa thought with a sinking feeling. "He is going to ask me to leave, to find somewhere else to go once I am back on my feet." She should have known this was temporary, should have guarded her heart better. "The thing is," Zachary continued, still not looking at her, "a child needs a father, not just in name but in truth. Someone to teach them and protect them and help raise them up right. And you should not have to do this alone, should not have to bear the weight of judgment and whispers for the rest of your life." "I know," Willa said quietly, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. "I will figure something out. You have been more than generous already." "That is not what I mean," Zachary said, and now he did turn to her, his gray-blue eyes intense. "What I mean is, I would like to be that father if you will have me. I would like to give that child my name and you too if you are willing. I am asking you to marry me, Willa." For a moment, Willa could not process what she was hearing. She stared at him, her mouth open, unable to form words. "You want to marry me?" she finally managed. "I do," Zachary said. "And before you think it is just charity or some misplaced sense of duty, let me be clear. These past months, having you here, getting to know you, I have come to care for you deeply. More than care, if I am being honest. I think I am falling in love with you, Willa Jensen, and I want a life with you, a real marriage, not just on paper but in truth." "But I am pregnant with another man's child," Willa said, needing him to understand the reality of what he was proposing. "People will always know that. They will talk and judge and make assumptions." "Let them," Zachary said. "I do not care what people think. All I care about is you and that baby and the life we could build together. I am not asking you to pretend the past did not happen. I am asking you to build a future with me despite it." Willa felt tears streaming down her face, but they were not tears of sorrow. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I have been for weeks now, but I did not think you could feel the same way. I am used goods, damaged, not the kind of woman a man like you should want." "You are exactly the kind of woman I want," Zachary said fiercely. He took her hands in his grip warm and strong. "You are brave and strong and kind, and you have faced things that would have broken lesser people. You are a survivor, Willa, and I would be honored if you would take my name and let me help you raise that child." "Yes," Willa said, the word coming out on a sob. "Yes, I will marry you, Zachary Lawson. I will marry you and I will love you with everything I have." Zachary pulled her into his arms then, carefully mindful of her belly between them, and held her as she cried out months of fear and pain and relief. When she finally quieted, he tipped her face up to his and kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise. It was Willa's first kiss since Thomas, and it washed away the memory of every cruel touch, every harsh word. This was what a kiss should be, she thought. This was what love felt like. They were married a week later in the church in Sioux Falls, with Daniel Reed and Mrs. Callahan as witnesses. Willa wore a simple dress of soft blue cotton that Zachary had bought for her, altered to accommodate her pregnancy, and Zachary wore his best suit, which he admitted he had not put on since Margaret's funeral. The minister was an older man named Reverend Thompson, who asked no uncomfortable questions and spoke the words of the ceremony with warmth and sincerity. When Zachary said his vows, his voice was steady and sure. "I take you, Willa, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you and cherish you in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, as long as we both shall live. And I promise to be a father to your child, to raise them as my own, and to give them my name and my protection for all of their days." Willa's voice shook when it was her turn, but she got through it. "I take you, Zachary, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you and honor you, to stand by you through whatever life brings, and to build a home with you filled with love and laughter. I promise to be a good wife to you and a good mother to all the children we may have." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Zachary kissed her with a tenderness that made Willa's heart swell. They were met with congratulations from the few people present, and Mrs. Callahan pressed a small bouquet of prairie flowers into Willa's hands. "Be happy, dear," the older woman said. "You have found a good man, and that is a rare thing in this world." They rode back to the ranch that afternoon, side by side, and Willa felt a lightness in her spirit that she had not known in longer than she could remember. She was no longer alone. She was no longer ashamed. She was Willa Lawson, wife to a good man, and whatever came next, they would face it together. That night, Zachary moved Willa's things into the larger bedroom, the one that had been his alone for 3 years. He was careful and respectful, not pushing for intimacies that she might not be ready for, but Willa found that she wanted his closeness, needed the comfort of his presence beside her. "I love you," she said as they lay together in the darkness, her back against his chest and his arm draped protectively over her belly. "I love you too," Zachary murmured into her hair. "More than I thought I could love anyone again. You have brought life back to this house, Willa. You have brought life back to me." The baby kicked against his hand and Zachary laughed softly. "Strong little thing, is it not?" "Very strong," Willa agreed. "Keeps me awake half the night sometimes." "Well, best get used to that," Zachary said. "From what I hear, babies are not known for their consideration of their parents' sleep schedules." They talked quietly into the night, making plans and sharing dreams, until finally sleep claimed them both. And for the first time in a very long time, Willa slept without nightmares, safe and warm in the arms of the man she loved. September arrived with cooler temperatures, and the first hints of autumn color touching the trees along the creek. Willa grew increasingly uncomfortable, her belly enormous and her movements slow. Zachary fussed over her constantly, bringing her pillows and cool drinks and insisting she put her feet up every chance she got. Mrs. Callahan came to stay a week before Willa's due date, setting up in the room that had been Willa's before the marriage, and her presence was reassuring. Labor began on a Tuesday morning, just after dawn. Willa woke to a cramping sensation in her lower back and knew immediately what it was. She roused Zachary with a shake of his shoulder. "It is time," she said simply. Zachary was up and moving immediately, pulling on his clothes and heading for Mrs. Callahan's room. The older woman appeared moments later, fully dressed despite the early hour, and took charge of the situation with a calm efficiency that Willa found immensely comforting. "First babies take their time," Mrs. Callahan said as she examined Willa. "Could be hours yet, or it could be quick. Either way, we will get through it together." Zachary wanted to stay, but Mrs. Callahan shooed him out, saying this was women's work and he would only be in the way. He went reluctantly, and Willa could hear him pacing in the main room, his boots a steady rhythm against the wooden floor. The labor was long and hard, as first labors often are. The pains came in waves that built to crescendos and then receded, only to build again. Willa walked when she could, leaned against the bedpost when she could not, and tried to remember to breathe through the worst of it. Mrs. Callahan was a steady presence, offering water and encouragement and practical advice. As afternoon faded into evening, the pains intensified. Willa cried out despite herself, and immediately Zachary was at the door. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Please, I want to be with her." Mrs. Callahan looked at Willa, who nodded through her pain. "Let him in." Zachary came to her side and took her hand, letting her squeeze with a strength that probably hurt him, though he never complained. "You are doing so well," he murmured. "So strong, so brave." "I am right here, and I am not going anywhere." It was full dark when the baby finally came, arriving with a lusty cry that filled the room. Mrs. Callahan wrapped the child in a clean cloth and placed the bundle in Willa's arms. "A boy," she announced. "A healthy, beautiful boy." Willa looked down at the red-faced, squalling infant in her arms and felt a love so fierce it nearly stopped her heart. This was her son, her child, perfect and whole and here. She looked up at Zachary, who was staring at the baby with an expression of wonder. "You want to hold him?" she asked. Zachary nodded, unable to speak, and Willa carefully transferred the baby to his arms. Zachary cradled the infant with surprising gentleness for such a big man, and the baby quieted, looking up at him with unfocused eyes. "Hello, little one," Zachary said softly. "Welcome to the world. I am your papa, and I am going to take care of you for all of your days." He looked at Willa, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Have you thought about a name?" "I was thinking William," Willa said. "After my father. William Zachary Lawson, if you approve." "It is perfect," Zachary said. "William Zachary Lawson. That child will know my name, and he will know he is loved, and that is all that matters." The weeks after William's birth passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings, and the particular chaos that a newborn brings to a household. Mrs. Callahan stayed for 2 weeks, teaching Willa the practicalities of infant care and making sure she was recovering properly. Zachary took over the cooking and cleaning without complaint, and Willa was grateful beyond words for his support. Daniel Reed came by one afternoon and stood awkwardly in the doorway, staring at the baby with the mix of fascination and terror that young men often show in the presence of infants. "He is real small," Daniel observed. "All babies are small," Willa said with amusement. "He will grow." "I suppose," Daniel said doubtfully. "Congratulations, though, to both of you. It is good to see the ranch feeling like a home again." As autumn deepened and winter approached, Willa and Zachary settled into their new life as parents. William was a good baby, as babies go, sleeping for longer stretches as the weeks passed and smiling his first real smile when he was 2 months old. Zachary doted on the boy, holding him whenever he could and talking to him in a low rumble that seemed to soothe William when nothing else would. One evening in late October, as they sat together by the fire with William sleeping in a cradle that Zachary had built with his own hands, Zachary spoke the words that had been in both their hearts. "He is mine," Zachary said simply, his eyes on the sleeping infant. "I do not care whose blood runs in his veins. He is my son in every way that matters." "I know," Willa said, reaching over to take his hand. "And you are his father, the only one he will ever know. Thank you, Zachary. Thank you for giving us this life, this family." "Thank you for trusting me with it," Zachary replied. "I know it was not easy after what you went through, but I promise you, Willa, I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "I could never regret it," Willa said. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and William, you are my whole world." They kissed then, a slow and gentle meeting of lips that spoke of love and commitment and shared purpose. And from his cradle, William made a small sound of contentment, as if even in sleep he knew he was safe and loved and home. Winter came to Dakota Territory with a vengeance, bringing snow that piled in drifts against the house and temperatures that plummeted below zero. Zachary worked long hours keeping the ranch running, breaking ice on water troughs and making sure the cattle did not freeze. Willa kept the home fires burning and William bundled in layers, and they weathered the cold together. It was during one of the worst blizzards, when the world outside was nothing but white and howling wind, that Willa and Zachary talked about their future. William was 4 months old, sleeping peacefully despite the storm, and they sat close to the fire for warmth. "I want more children," Zachary said. "If you do, I mean. I want William to have brothers and sisters, want this house to be full of noise and chaos and love." "I want that too," Willa said. "I want a big family, the kind I always dreamed of as a child, and I want them to all be yours, Zachary." "Ours. William is mine," Zachary said firmly. "Never doubt that. But yes, I would like to have more children with you, as many as we are blessed with." "We should wait a bit longer," Willa said practically. "William is still so small and I am only just getting my strength back." "But maybe next year, whenever you are ready," Zachary agreed. "I am not in a rush. I have everything I need right here." Spring came eventually, as it always does, melting the snow and bringing green back to the prairie. William grew and thrived, sitting up on his own by 6 months, and babbling sounds that Willa swore were actual words, though Zachary insisted it was just baby nonsense. The ranch prospered, the cattle coming through the winter in good condition, and Zachary hired on another hand to help with the spring work. By the time William celebrated his first birthday in September of 1879, Willa was pregnant again. This time there was no shame, only joy, and when she told Zachary the news, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure happiness. "A brother or sister for William," he said. "This is wonderful news, Willa." "I am glad you think so," Willa said, smiling at his enthusiasm. "I was hoping you would be pleased." "Pleased does not begin to cover it," Zachary said. He knelt down and put a hand on her still flat belly. "Hello in there, little one. We are looking forward to meeting you. This pregnancy was easier than the first, with no fear or uncertainty to shadow it." Willa carried the child with confidence, knowing she had Zachary's support and love at every step. William was walking now, toddling around the house on unsteady legs and getting into everything, and Willa wondered how she would manage with a toddler and a newborn, but she was not afraid. The baby came in April of 1880, another relatively easy labor, and this time it was a girl. They named her Sarah Margaret Lawson, the middle name in honor of Zachary's first wife. Willa had suggested it, feeling that Margaret deserved to be remembered and honored, and Zachary had been moved to tears by the gesture. "You are an extraordinary woman," he said, holding his daughter for the first time. To think of that, to want to honor Margaret that way, it means more than I can say. "She was part of your life, part of making you who you are," Willa said, "and she would have loved William and Sarah if she had lived, so we honor her memory this way." William was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to touch her constantly and bring her his toys. Zachary had to watch him carefully to make sure his enthusiasm did not accidentally harm the infant, but it was clear that William loved his sister with his whole heart. The years passed in a rush of busy days and hard work and simple joys. The ranch grew and prospered, and Zachary proved to be as good a businessman as he was a rancher. They added a room onto the house when Willa became pregnant for the third time, and then had to add another room after the fourth child. By 1885, the Lawson household included William, now 6, Sarah at 5, Joseph at 3, and baby Martha, born just 6 months before. Willa sometimes looked around at her loud, chaotic, wonderful family and marveled at how far she had come. She thought of the terrified, ashamed girl who had stepped off the stagecoach in Sioux Falls 7 years ago, and she could hardly recognize herself. That girl had been broken, but she had healed, had found love and purpose and joy in the most unexpected of places. Zachary was the center of it all, the rock upon which their family was built. He was patient with the children, firm when he needed to be but always fair, and he loved them all fiercely and equally. To the world, William was his oldest son, and no one who saw them together could doubt the bond between them. William had Zachary's mannerisms, his steady way of speaking, his quiet strength. He was, in every way that mattered, Zachary's boy. One evening in the summer of 1885, after the children were all in bed and the house was finally quiet, Zachary and Willa sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the prairie. Willa was tired but content, her hand resting in Zachary's larger one. "You ever regret it?" Zachary asked suddenly. "Taking a chance on me that day in town?" "Never," Willa said immediately. "Not for a single moment. You saved me, Zachary. You and your kindness and your willingness to see past what the world said I was. You gave me back my life." "You gave me mine," Zachary countered. "This house was just a building before you came. Now it is a home. You filled it with love and laughter, and you gave me a family I never thought I would have again. I should be thanking you." "Then we saved each other," Willa said, "and we built something beautiful together." "That we did," Zachary agreed. He was quiet for a moment, then added, "I think about that day sometimes, seeing you standing outside the church looking so lost. What if I had ridden past? What if I had not stopped to talk to you?" "But you did stop," Willa said. "You saw someone who needed help, and you offered it without asking for anything in return. That is who you are, Zachary. That is why I love you." "I love you too," Zachary said. "More now than I did when we married, if that is possible. Every day with you is a gift." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge one by one in the darkening sky. From inside the house came the sound of a baby crying, and Willa sighed. "Martha is awake. I should go feed her." "Let me," Zachary said, standing. "You sit here and rest for a few more minutes. I can bring her to you." He disappeared into the house, and Willa heard his low voice soothing the baby, then his footsteps returning. He emerged with Martha in his arms, the infant quieting at her father's presence, and handed her to Willa with a gentleness that still made her heart flutter. As Willa nursed Martha, Zachary sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders, and they watched the night deepen around them. This was their life, Willa thought. This porch, this house, this family. It was not perfect, it was not always easy, but it was theirs, and it was filled with love. William came out onto the porch a few minutes later, rubbing sleepy eyes. "I had a bad dream," he said in a small voice. Zachary opened his other arm, and William climbed into his lap, tucking his head under his father's chin. "You are safe, son," Zachary said. "Nothing bad is going to happen to you, I promise." "I know, Papa," William said, already half asleep again. "I am safe when you are here." Willa felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were good tears, happy tears. She looked at the scene before her, her husband holding their oldest son while their youngest daughter nursed peacefully. And she felt a gratitude so profound, it nearly overwhelmed her. She had been pregnant and ashamed when she arrived in Sioux Falls, with nothing but fear and desperation driving her. And a lonely cowboy had looked at her, had seen past the judgment and the shame, and had said, "That child will know my name." And he had meant it, had followed through on that promise, and had given her and William a life beyond anything she could have imagined. More than that, he had given her love, true and deep and lasting. He had given her a family. He had given her a home. As the years continued to roll past, the Lawson family became a fixture in the community around Sioux Falls. William grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working on the ranch with his father. He had a natural way with horses, and could gentle even the most skittish animal with patience and kindness. Zachary taught him everything he knew, and it was clear that one day William would be a fine rancher in his own right. Sarah took after her mother, with a quick mind and nimble fingers that could sew and knit and create beauty from simple materials. She was also the most stubborn of all the children, a trait that both exasperated and amused her parents in equal measure. Joseph was the wild one, always climbing trees and getting into scrapes, while Martha was sweet and gentle, content to sit with her dolls and help her mother in the kitchen. In 1888, Willa discovered she was pregnant again. And in the spring of 1889, she gave birth to twin boys, Matthew and Luke. The twins were a handful from the moment they were born, seeming to have inherited Joseph's adventurous spirit in double measure. The house was in constant chaos, but it was a happy chaos, full of love and laughter and the simple joys of family life. Zachary proved to be an excellent father, patient and kind but firm when necessary. He taught his sons to work hard and treat others with respect, to be honest and honorable in all their dealings. He taught his daughters that they were just as capable as any boy and should never let anyone tell them otherwise. And he loved them all with a fierce devotion that never wavered. William, now 10, sometimes asked about where babies came from, as all children do at that age. Willa and Zachary had decided long ago to be honest with the children, in age-appropriate ways, and when William asked if all brothers and sisters came from the same mama and papa, Zachary sat him down for a talk. "Most of the time, yes," Zachary said carefully. "But sometimes families are made in different ways. Sometimes a child comes to parents who love them and choose them, and that is just as real and true as any other family." "Did that happen with our family?" William asked, his young mind already putting pieces together. Zachary looked at Willa, who nodded. They had known this day would come. "Yes, son, you came to us in a special way. Your mama was very brave, and she brought you to me when you were still growing inside her. And I chose to be your papa, and I gave you my name because I loved you from the moment I knew about you." William was quiet for a moment, processing this. "So we do not have the same father, the one who gave me to Mama. We do not share blood," Zachary said. "But we share something more important. We share love and a life and a family. You are my son, William. That man who came before, he is not part of your life and never will be. I am your father in every way that matters." Do you understand?" William looked up at Zachary with those serious gray eyes that looked so much like Zachary's own, learned rather than inherited. "I understand, Papa, and I am glad you are my father. I would not want anyone else." Zachary pulled William into a fierce hug. "And I would not want any other son. You are mine, William Zachary Lawson, and do not ever forget it." As William grew older, he never seemed troubled by the knowledge of his origins. He knew who his father was, knew where he belonged, and that was enough. He loved his siblings fiercely, protective of them all, especially the younger ones who looked up to him with admiration. By 1892, the Lawson Ranch was one of the most successful in the region. Zachary had built it from a modest operation into something substantial, and he had done it through hard work and smart decisions, and the support of his wife. Willa had been his partner in every sense, managing the household accounts and helping make decisions about the ranch's future. William, now 13, was already talking about the day when he would take over the ranch from his father. Sarah, at 12, announced that she wanted to be a teacher and help educate the children in the area. Joseph, at 10, could not decide between being a rancher like his father or a sheriff like the one in Sioux Falls. Martha, at 7, wanted to be a mother with lots of babies, while the twins, now 3, mostly wanted to cause trouble and get into things they should not. One afternoon in the fall of 1892, a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was well dressed, with city clothes and a fine horse, and he asked to speak to Willa. Zachary was out with the cattle, so Willa met the man on the porch, her hands clasped in front of her and a wary expression on her face. "Can I help you?" she asked. "My name is Richard Jenkins," the man said. "I am a lawyer from Kansas City. I have been trying to locate you for some time, Mrs. Lawson." Willa felt her heart begin to race. Kansas City. Her old life, the one she had run from so many years ago. "What do you want?" "I represent the estate of Thomas Mitchell," the lawyer said, and Willa felt the world tilt. Thomas. She had not heard that name spoken aloud in years. "Mr. Mitchell died 3 months ago in a riding accident. He left a will, and in it he made some provisions." "That has nothing to do with me," Willa said flatly. "I have not seen or spoken to that man in 14 years. "I understand," the lawyer said, "but Mr. Mitchell's will specifically mentions a child that might have been born as a result of your relationship. He set aside a sum of money to be given to any such child should they be located." Willa felt cold all over. "No," she said. "Absolutely not. I do not want his money, and my son does not need it. We have built a good life here, and Thomas Mitchell has no part in it. Mrs. Lawson, this is a significant sum of money. It could provide for your son's education, his future." "My son has a father," Willa said, her voice hard. "A father who has loved him and raised him and given him everything that matters. Thomas Mitchell was nothing to him, and his money means nothing to us. Please leave." The lawyer looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Willa's expression must have convinced him it would be futile. "As you wish. But if you change your mind, here is my card. The money will be held in trust for 5 years in case you reconsider." He rode away, and Willa stood on the porch, shaking with emotion. When Zachary returned an hour later, she told him everything, the words tumbling out in a rush. Zachary listened without interruption, his face growing darker as she spoke. When she finished, he pulled her into his arms. "You did the right thing," he said. "That man has no claim on William, not now, not ever. We do not need his money or anything else from him." "I know," Willa said. "But what if William finds out someday? What if he thinks I should have taken the money for him?" "Then we will explain it to him," Zachary said. "We will tell him that some things are more important than money, that integrity and family and love matter more than any amount of cash. And if I know our son, he will understand." As it turned out, they did not have to wait to find out. William had heard the conversation from the barn where he had been working and came to find his parents that evening. "I heard what that man said," William told them, his young face serious. "About the money from Thomas Mitchell." Willa felt her heart sink. "William, I can explain." "You do not need to explain," William said. "I am glad you sent him away. I do not want anything from that man. He hurt you, Mama, and he did not want me. Papa wanted me, and Papa raised me, and that is all I need to know." Zachary gripped William's shoulder. "You are a good man, son. I am proud of you." "I am proud to be your son," William said simply, "and I always will be." The incident with the lawyer was never mentioned again, and life went on as it always had. The children grew and thrived, each developing their own personalities and dreams. Willa and Zachary grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year, weathering the inevitable challenges and changes that life brought. In 1895, when William was 16, he met a girl named Elizabeth from a neighboring ranch. She was 15, bright and kind, and it was clear from the start that William was smitten. Zachary teased him good-naturedly about it, while Willa watched her oldest son navigate the complicated world of courtship with amusement and pride. Sarah began working as a teacher's assistant at the school in Sioux Falls, preparing for the day when she could teach her own classes. Joseph, now 13, was Zachary's shadow on the ranch, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and the land. Martha, at 10, helped her mother with the younger children and showed a talent for cooking that rivaled Willa's own. The twins, Matthew and Luke, were now 6 and just starting school, much to their teacher's dismay. They were bright boys but mischievous, always finding new ways to test boundaries and cause harmless chaos. And then, to everyone's surprise, Willa discovered she was pregnant again at the age of 38. It was unexpected, and she worried about the risks of having a baby at her age, but Zachary was thrilled. "One more," he said, his hand on her belly. "One more child to fill our house with noise and love. What could be better?" The baby, another boy they named Peter, was born in early 1896, healthy and strong despite Willa's age. The older children doted on their baby brother, especially Martha, who declared herself his special protector. As the century drew to a close, the Lawson family was a testament to the power of love and choice and commitment. Zachary had kept his promise, made that day in Sioux Falls in 1878. William knew his name, knew he was loved, knew he belonged. And so did all the other children, each one cherished and valued and given every opportunity to thrive. William married Elizabeth in the spring of 1900, a beautiful ceremony that took place at the ranch, with family and friends gathered to celebrate. He was 21, she was 20, and they were deeply in love. Zachary stood beside William as his best man, and when he gave the toast at the reception, his voice was thick with emotion. "I am proud to call you my son," Zachary said, looking at William. "You have grown into a fine man, honest and hardworking and kind. You will be a good husband to Elizabeth, and one day you will be a wonderful father. And I hope you know that whatever life brings, I will always be here for you. That is what fathers do. They stand by their children no matter what." William embraced Zachary, and Willa saw tears in both men's eyes. She felt her own tears fall, but they were tears of joy and gratitude. This was her family, built from nothing but hope and love and the kindness of a lonely cowboy who had seen past her shame and offered her a chance. Sarah married a few years later to a young man named David who wanted to be a doctor. They moved to Rapid City where he could study, but they visited often, and Sarah made sure her parents knew they were always in her thoughts. Joseph, as he had always wanted, became a rancher. working alongside Zachary and eventually taking over more and more of the operations as Zachary grew older. Martha married a shopkeeper in Sioux Falls, and the twins, when they finally settled down, both became skilled carpenters, building houses throughout the region. Peter, the youngest, grew up surrounded by love and attention from his older siblings and their growing families. By the time he was 10, he was an uncle many times over, as William and Elizabeth and the others started families of their own. Willa and Zachary grew old together, their hair turning gray and then white, their bodies slowing but their love never diminishing. They spent their days on the porch of the ranch house, watching their grandchildren play in the yard, and their grown children manage the ranch that Zachary had built and Willa had helped sustain. On a warm summer evening in 1920, Zachary and Willa sat together on that same porch, their hands clasped as they had been countless times before. They were both in their 60s now, and while their bodies showed the wear of a life fully lived, their spirits remained strong. "Do you remember the day we met?" Zachary asked, his voice soft with memory. "Every detail," Willa said. "I was so lost, so afraid, and then you appeared like an answer to a prayer I had not even known to say." "I was lost too," Zachary admitted. "I just did not know it until I saw you. You gave me a reason to live again, a purpose beyond just getting through each day." "We saved each other," Willa said, as she had said so many times over the years. "We did," Zachary agreed. "And we built something beautiful. Look at all of this, Willa. Our children, our grandchildren, this ranch, this life. It all came from one moment of kindness, one decision to help a stranger." "You said that child would know your name," Willa reminded him, her voice trembling slightly. "And he does. William knows, and so do all the others. They know that you are a man of your word, a man of honor and love. They know they are blessed to call you father and grandfather." "And I am blessed to call them mine," Zachary said. He turned to look at her, his gray-blue eyes still bright despite his years. "I love you, Willa Lawson. I have loved you for 42 years, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Willa said. "More than words can say. You are my heart, Zachary. You always have been." They sat in silence as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink and purple. Around them, the ranch bustled with life. William was in the barn with his own sons, teaching them as Zachary had taught him. Sarah had come to visit with her family, and her laughter floated on the evening air. The grandchildren ran and played, their shouts and giggles a constant background music. This was the life they had built, Zachary and Willa. From shame and loneliness, they had created love and family and legacy. From fear and uncertainty, they had forged strength and purpose and joy. And it had all started with a simple act of kindness, a lonely cowboy who had seen a pregnant, ashamed woman and had chosen to help rather than judge. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Willa leaned her head on Zachary's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her. They sat like that, two souls who had found each other against all odds, and they watched the night deepen around them, content in the knowledge that they had lived well and loved deeply, and that their story would continue on through the generations that followed. William came up to the porch as full darkness fell, his own gray-blue eyes so like his father's, soft with affection as he looked at his parents. "Time to come in," he said gently. "It is getting cold out here." "In a minute, son," Zachary said. "We are just enjoying the evening." William nodded and went back inside, understanding that his parents needed this time together. And Zachary and Willa remained on the porch a while longer, holding hands as they had done for more than 4 decades, grateful for every moment they had been given, every challenge they had overcome, every joy they had shared. They had started with nothing but hope and courage and a willingness to trust in the possibility of something better. And they had ended with everything that mattered: love, family, purpose, and the bone-deep satisfaction of a life well lived. Willa had arrived pregnant and ashamed, and the lonely cowboy had said that child would know his name. And in saying those words, in keeping that promise, Zachary Lawson had changed not just William's life, but the lives of everyone who came after, creating a legacy of love that would endure for generations.